President. I seek leave to make a brief explanation before addressing a question without notice to the Minister for Human Services on the topic of regional homelessness.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted. The Honourable Mr Simms.
Thank you. I refer to reports yesterday that a homeless support service in Port Lincoln is being forced to ask locals to donate tents, sleeping bags and old swags following an increase in people seeking support in the region and a chronic shortage of housing. This comes following reports in March that rental shortages in both regional SA and Adelaide have made short-term accommodation hard to find, with regional towns often not having enough homes to accommodate prospective workers who are looking to move. My question to the Minister is, will the government commit to building crisis shelters for people experiencing homelessness in the regions to ensure that services are not required to beg for tents and sleeping bags?
Minister for Human Services has the call.
Thank you, Mr President. I thank the honourable member for his question. Clearly in South Australia we are in the midst of a lot of movement of people, in some instances people coming back to South Australia or people relocating from interstate, and that is having an impact, a flow through to a range of parts of the housing system, and that has an impact on people who may otherwise have accessed private rental markets, including in regional areas. I do note, in particular in relation to Port Lincoln, that quite recently there was some commentary that under other circumstances that in terms of people who are homeless are able to access other supports through informal processes. Port Lincoln is a bit like other areas which are quite popular in terms of holidays as well, such as places like Victor Harbour, where there can often be shortages of housing because they are very popular places and it's hard for people to get there. We also see in regional areas, for instance in Port Pirie, when there's been a lot of contractors, that it's hard for the emergency services personnel to access hotel accommodation. So there are seasonal changes at times, and overlaying that we also have this particular issue in South Australia of lots of people returning home. Obviously, those sorts of calls and those forms of accommodation we would see as a last resort. The homelessness services do operate throughout South Australia. In terms of the, I think you asked about crisis. We are, in terms of modernising our approach to homelessness, shelters and congregate living isn't necessarily the most modern approach to these answers, and into the future we're looking at more of people going into, if you like, mainstream forms rather than being in shelters. There can be particular problems with having people in a congregate setting. If there's one, if somebody's being disruptive, that impacts on everybody else, and the only place that they've got to go to is their own room. And we have seen that from time to time in those forms of accommodation. In terms of particularly youth homelessness, we announced quite recently Kids Undercover, which is specifically for young people who may otherwise experience homelessness, as one of a suite of measures. So it's probably not the direction that we would look at going forward. We're much more interested in what we call the rapid rehousing model, so that people can find a property to live in with supports if they need them. I am aware that there are other parts of the West Coast where there may actually be some housing vacancies if people were interested in relocating into those, but our emergency services are very much at the front line of this, and we always take their advice.
Mr Simms, supplementary.
Noting the Minister's remarks regarding crisis accommodation, does the Minister regard people sleeping in tents as a modern solution?
The Minister.
No, I certainly don't, and that is always as a last resort, but I'm not convinced that building shelters is the is the solution to housing people. We obviously have a strategic housing plan which is looking at the whole suite, and we are very keen to make sure that there are more dwellings built in South Australia, which is part of our solution.